Hello everyone, in today's lab I'm going to cover lighting. So I was able to locate my uh, shield. I actually saved over my original file on lab 6 when I was doing this. So I had it saved in two different places apparently, but this is my lab 6. So might want to double check to see if you've been sort of organizing your folders the same way as me. If you ran into the same issue, that maybe you double check your lab 6 shield file and it'll magically pop up with the texture on it. So anyway, I've got my scene now properly set up, and I'm going to talk briefly about cameras, lighting, and rendering. So these are, this is basically how you create a final product in the 3D world. So uh, if you're doing gaming, game engines have a built-in renderer. It takes a lot of processing to do it live like that at 60 frames a second and things like that. So um, anyway, you could literally have an entire class on lighting alone. So this is going to be a super condensed version on basic lighting. We're going to talk about basic lighting. So I've already shown you what the sky dome light looks like, but I want to stay away from that in this lab. And I want to talk to you about uh, the there's basically three lights that are sort of standard without getting too complicated or technical. You have a backlight, you have a key light, and a fill light along with your camera. So it's a 3-point basic lighting setup. So the backlight sits on the back of it. Typically, we'll create like a rim of light around your character or subject for that matter. The key light is the light that brights the the brightest on you, which gives the most visible light. And then your fill light is going to sort of be a little bit less powerful on the opposite side. So you'll have a key light on a 45-degree angle going, hitting me on this side. And then my fill light would fill me up on this side, but it'll be darker, probably by about 50% in terms of strength. And then my backlight is going to be a lower intensity as well, but you can use it to create like rim lighting, and that's when you have like a bright light edge kind of shining right behind your arm, your neck, your head, your body. I'm using myself as a subject because I'm right in front of the camera. So anyway, that would be sort of how you would go about doing a production lighting scheme. So my backlight's going to have to be way back here. And I'm going to try to touch base on the different lights in Arnold because we're going to be using the Arnold lights because we're going to be using the Arnold renderer for this. So when I go into this, I'm going to go to lights, area light. Let me tap 7 on my keyboard so you can see what's going on. And you can barely see, you're getting some light, but not a whole lot. So in your attribute editor, you're going to need to increase the lighting. Now that is actually what is considered a rim light right there. Like a rim light, you see just sort of the edge, but we would need a fill light on the other side to give a little bit more view of that blade in this particular instance. But to show you, the intensity kind of caps at 10. It really doesn't. Let's go at 100, and now you'll see that I'm getting, and that's because of the scale of my scene. This light is built for a smaller scale. So we're going to have to, I'm going to just go by increments of basically 10. Let's try 200, 300, 500, 700. And you'll see that you're starting to get some cool little looks to it. And if I turn this all the way around, now this is super shiny, this floor, because I didn't actually add a diffuse to it, and you'll see I'm getting a lot of weird shine, but at the right angle I am. So anyway, we'll get back into, didn't mean to do that. We'll get back to that in a second. I'm going to delete this light real quick. I'm going to tap 6 on my keyboard, and I want to create a camera. So how do you do that? You just simply go to create, and we're going to go to camera or cameras, and we're going to stick with this basic one, this one can camera, aim, and up. Stay away from those. We're just going to stick with something simple and click camera. And naturally, it looks like a camera, right? An old school camera, but it looks like a camera. So I want to use this camera as my default point. So typically really the best way to go about doing something like this is you get your camera placed exactly where you want. And let me show you what it looks like when you're looking through this camera. So I'm going to tap spacebar. Oh, I'm in my UV editor. I'm going to switch to my 4-point perspective view here. Right, here's my scene set up. I can see the sort of the layout of my floor plan up here. And then my front and my side view. Now, I'm going to keep my top view for now. I'm going to tap 6 on my keyboard so I can see it. Just so I can see where everything is pretty easily. I think that's a great one to use. Since both this side and this side are pretty identical, I feel like this one's going to be better because I can see pretty much all of my objects in here. I can see them all on this side either, so it's really a matter of personal preference. But this is going to be the one I'm going to use right now to look through my camera. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to Panels, Perspective, and Camera 1. And now this is my Camera 1. I'm going to tap 6 on my keyboard, and as I zoom out, you'll see the camera zooms out in my perspective view. So now I'm actually using a camera this is going to be the camera that I'm going to be rendering my viewport through. So in order to do that, to get the right perspective, I want to go to is it under shading or view? Give me 1 second to find it. Camera settings, there we go. So under camera settings, I'm going to go to resolution gate. And you'll see it says 960 by 540. That's my resolution gate. That's going to be the render scene that that's what I'm going to be able to see in my render. So basically, if you were going to render at 4K, you'd have to go to 4096 by XYZ, whatever number it is. In this case, I'm going to keep the render small. So this is going to be the first time we're going to go to our rendering tab. So I'm from modeling, I'm going to go to rendering, and I'm going to change this because I want to set this first. I'm going to click on the render tab up here at the top. You won't see it unless you switch this to rendering, render settings. And in here, I want to change it just to be a little bit larger from 960 to 540, or I can use this drop down which has a lot of them. HD 720. I'm going to use HD 720, so high def 720. So it's going to be 1280 by 720. That's what I was going to set it to. Resolution's at 72. All this should be by default. So that is going to work perfectly fine for me, and you'll notice that it switched up here from 1280 to 720. It's known as a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, and then your square one is like a 4 by 3. So anyway, this is going to be the camera I'm using. So typically, I'm not going to get too crazy on, and you can't undo your movement. So if you wanted to change it, you either A, have to back out and click on your camera to make those adjustments, or in the camera, you used to be able to select the camera right from in here. Select camera. For whatever reason, if at some point I must have minimized it, you can click this little bar right here. I know it's so tiny, but it's right here. You click on that, and it'll give you these extra. I know I've had this open before, so at some point I accidentally clicked it because we did the import image plane. So if you click that little, like, it has a little, it's like a line with a little arrow pointing this way. You click on that, and it will minimize it for you and expand it. So here's my camera. Now I just have to find a placement for it. I'm not going to get too much into staging and all that kind of stuff, but I want the cooler stuff to be sort of visible in my render. I don't have anything on the bookshelf, and I don't want to have this peeking through, so I'm going to have to be close enough or at a certain angle in order to see everything. So I think this will work. I don't have to even see the bottom of the blade. I can zoom in as close as I want, depending on what I want it to look like. I'm going to keep everything sort of visually able to be seen in here, because we worked hard to get this far. I feel like it should be in a part of our scene. So, and I can use any angle I want. So this is basically on the floor, and I want to make sure I'm not bleeding through the floor, but the floor looks cool too, so let's kind of play around with our angle here. And we'll do something like, I don't know. I'll do something like that. So here's our scene. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my camera here, and I don't want to accidentally move it. I love this. You know, you get it in just the right spot. You don't want to mess it up because it's so easy and easily to move it at this point. So select your camera and then highlight all of these and right click and do lock selected. And now no matter what I do, I can't rotate, pan, zoom in, zoom out. And if you wanted to go back to it, and because you wanted to make changes, you go back and highlight all of these again and right click and go to unlock selected. So very happy where my camera placement is. I can see it in my scene right there. I can see what it's actually portraying. And that's as far as I want to get with that. Now, with that being said, the next thing I want to do is I want to start to add some lights in here. So I already showed you the photometric light, I think it's called. Arnold lights, photometric, or no, I showed you the area light. I've shown you in previous labs the sky dome light, the mesh light, oh, the mesh light is if you have a mesh selected, so you like a candle, right? And you have the little flame on the top, you want that to work. So let's just do that real quick. Let's create a sphere, bring it up. I think that's what it is. Arnold lights, mesh light. Yep, so now it's got a light on it. I'm going to tap 7 on my keyboard. If I go to my attribute editor, now this object is actually a light. And if I bring this up, you can see that it actually lights my scene. Pretty cool, right? Exposure, let's play around with that. I'm probably gonna have to use massive numbers to see any difference. I don't even see a difference there. But I'm not gonna use that one yet, but I can always come back to it. And I can always go to my outliner and see. This is I do have a light in here, but I'm not using it. It's on one of my layers, and I turned off the visibility. Arnold Sky Dome light right here, and that was from an imported file. So anyway, I'm going to tap 6 again on my keyboard because I don't have any lights in here, so it's not going to show anything. That's why it looks totally black. Arnold light, the photometric light. I think this is going to be a light that we're going to use in this lab. So it actually points in a direction. So I can put my key light, my fill light, my backlight. I might even use a different kind of light. I can add as many lights in as I want. I'm going to require 3 backlight, fill light, key light. In fact, I'm so confident I'm going to use this one as my key light. Key light 1, just in case. So I'm going to go to my attribute editor and increase the intensity. I've been working in increments of 100, so let's just start at 500. And you can see that this actually points. And maybe I need it to be even more, and it doesn't light anything up top until I actually rotate it. So it's kind of working like a flashlight right now, right? So I'm going to go even higher. We'll go to like 1,000, and you'll notice as the further I pull it away, the light actually dies off just like a real light. So I think it's pretty neat to use. I might need an area light in here to just light the entire scene a little bit, but I'm not going to be too concerned. I always had this teacher that said the adding lights to your scene and then switching from from 5 to 6 is like cool, but like when you press the 7 button, it's like the look cool button. I always remember that for some reason, and I think it's pretty true because lighting adds just so much realism to your scene. Let's get this out of here. That it does. It looks a lot cooler with it. And what you want to do, if I wanted to, I can do panels, layouts, 2 panes side by side, and now I have my perspective here. I can switch this to my camera 1, and I'm going to press 7 because that's the one that I need for it to actually show. Now, I'm pretty happy with the camera placement. However, this sword I think could be placed a little bit better. Maybe I do something like this. And I'm going to go to my tool settings and switch it to object. And it'll look a lot better once I have everything sort of textured, right? But you'll notice here that I can't see the full image because it doesn't fit in that resolution gate, but it gives me a good idea of what it looks like. So it's just a little tip that I like to show everyone. So I'm going to go back to my 4 viewport here, but it's going to go back to default. So if I wanted to switch it back to camera 1, which I'm going to do, you'll see I've got it right there. So anyway, I'm going to go back to my little light here, drag it over, and I'm going to try to start to create some cool looks to this thing. Maybe 1,000 is too strong. Maybe not. I'm also going to create another light. And then with this light, let's see what a light portal is. Let's bring that down a little bit. And it gets harder to gauge. This doesn't even have any strength settings on it, so I'm not going to use the light portal light. I'm going to get rid of that one. And then lights. And then we have the physical sky. I'll show you what this is really quickly. What I'll do, I know it's going to look a little weird, but I'm going to render this scene just as it is. And I just want to show you what it's going to look like. I can't open photometric file. Okay, so ran into an error. There it goes. For whatever reason, it wouldn't work the first time. So that is going to give you like the illusion of an actual daylight scene, which I may incorporate, but you can actually rotate it just like as if it was the Earth on where you want the light to come from. In this case, I'm just going to switch it up and just see what happens. And then I might need to increase the intensity so you can see it a little bit better. You actually start to see that it's kind of like a sky, right? Pretty cool. Arnold, render. And my scene's lighting up really, really bright as I rotate it around. I might use that in this scene, but for now I'm going to turn it off. And if you want to see what this is starting to look like, now if you're using an older machine, a slower machine, You might not want to do this as often, or if you do, you need to go to your render settings to make it come out a little bit faster until you're ready for your really high res one, and turn this down to something very small, like stick with the HD 540 or something. And then Arnold. Oh, and then the other thing is when I'm doing this, this is gonna be my camera. I'm gonna do my final render through, and of course nothing happened. I'm gonna go to my render and render settings. And renderable camera, I'm gonna hit camera 1. And that's it. Renderable cameras, I'm gonna switch to camera 1 and hit close. And I'm gonna try that again. And let's hit render current frame instead. So it's rendering something. I might not have enough light in the scene for it to be able to read properly for the render. So let's go back here. And if the camera's not working for the rendering, we'll just stick with the perspective view because it's working. Oh, in which case I would have to go to... And I can always do render and try Arnold. And realistically, it's just basically because my light's not bright enough. That's what it is. So you'll notice your preview is definitely not the same as your... and I'm going to switch to viewport now. You don't want to use that Arnold render in the viewport unless you have a pretty powerful machine, because you just saw how long it took to load mine. But every time you rotate, move, and everything like that, it's going to start a brand new render. So it's you got to have a really good machine for that to do it in basically live time. So stick with your viewport. So it looks like I basically just don't have enough light, because if I were to add that physical sky, it works fine. Now the preview definitely is looking a lot brighter and normal in comparison to how our render is coming out. So let's try this real quick. And it's still not doing anything. So if you're running into render issues like I am right now, you can just take a screenshot of this, because I've had a number of students run into that. If I turn on the sky dome light, you'll see we're gonna definitely have to add a sky dome light based on what I'm seeing here because of the strength of it. Just not having enough strength for these little lights to work properly. But we're going to continue pushing forward. So your fill light, we're going to just use another. And for now, I'm going to delete this. I can always add it real quick if I want. I want to stick with this sort of look to it. Arnold lights. I'm going to add an area light. I'm going to flip that at 90 degrees, or negative 90 in this case. I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to scale it. It doesn't do anything to the strength of the light. It's just easier for me to see. And I'm just going to keep playing around with this. I'm going to start at 500. Okay. So this might even have to be like at 1,000, honestly, based off of what I was seeing. And I just want to see if this is going to render anything. So the area light actually really helped. Now I'm starting to see and let's switch really quick, render current frame. That should be, let's switch to here and do render current frame. Render settings again. It should be rendering through the camera. Rendering through camera 1. I'll just see what it looks like here. So yeah, I'm starting to get some really good lighting coming through without using a sky dome light. So the area light really helped. Now, this photometric light might not be the light I want to use, but... And if you go over here to create lights, these won't render right. So don't bother trying these. They don't render properly with the Arnold renderer. Just to show you, I'm going to put this on a layer. And maybe, unless anything's different from previous versions, let's change this to area, light, layer, save. And if I turn off the visibility, oh, I gotta switch to the viewport. Arnold render. Okay, so you'll see we're not getting anything there. I'm gonna go to create lights, directional light. Just want to see if this works now. Don't think it will, but just in case. And we're going to increase that intensity just to double check to see if it's working at all. And maybe it does work now. That's cool. In older versions it didn't actually pull light, so that's good to know. So my directional light is the light that I typically like to use when I'm not using Arnold, but since we are, and it's actually rendering, we are going to stick with it. And I'm going to turn down that intensity. So you'll notice that by default it's at like 1. We're going to need it to be like, I'll start at 5. This will be my key light. You know what? Go to my channel box to rename it. Key directional light. Then I will duplicate this light, switch it over here, and I'm going to turn this intensity, this is going to be my fill light, to be a little bit less strong. So we're going to go to try 2.5. Now I can even change the color of this light to, let's say, blue, which is really common in movies in a darker scene, like in the shadows or, you know, walking down the street, because they can't have it be black because you won't be able to see anything on the screen. It needs to have something to it, and blue is a usually common color that filmmakers, gamers, whatever you want to call it, use in night scenes or dark scenes. And you could change it to any color you'd like if I want it to be red, turquoise. And you can add some really cool things, and you can even change the strength of it. So if I didn't want it to be as blue, I can always change it. So now this might look weird, right? Because I have this sort of strange color involved, but rendering the current scene, and it's pretty strong. So maybe I want to bring it down to like 1. And now I kind of get, it's too dark on the back, so I need another light. And I can do another, I'm surprised these work now, but I'm happy about it. Ambient light, wow, that really brightens things up. I'm going to try an ambient light. And I think this really brightens everything up because it points in all directions. Let me see if we got something others. Oop. Point light. Spotlight's cool. So a spotlight, literally, if I increase this intensity, it does exactly. Now that's more of a flashlight if you ask me. But you can have that look to it as well. So I'm not going to use the spotlight. Area light, ambient light, directional light, point light. We'll try one more directional light. And I'm going to switch my tool settings to object. Drag that right back here. Rotate it down. Make it like 0.5. And let's try a quick little render just to see what we got. I'm getting some really strong shadows. I'd like to soften them up, and let's see what happens when I add this light back in. Now let's do Arnold render. So I think that is something that's going to work for me. It's still rendering. Rendering takes up a lot of processing, so you can't like do anything else on your computer while you're rendering. You kind of just got to let it sit and do its thing. And you can play around with a lot of different settings in the render settings. Now, there we go. I was like, why is that? So if you submit something like this, I'm going to be perfectly fine with it. In my old video below, I do a little bit more demonstration and lecturing on lighting itself. But I'm going to keep those photos in the lab. Perfect. Where I've got, this is the old material, but I think this one has a pretty decent explanation. If I remember right, I think I did a pretty good job on explaining lighting in a short period of time. But you have your backlight here, must use diffusion. So diffusion, so what that means is they actually cover the light with something to give it a lesser of a strength. A fill light, just to fill up the scene, is about 50 to 75% of the key light's brightness, and key light is the brightest at a 45-degree angle. So your brightest light will be your key light, your fill light, and this is just a standard setup. Now, in this little picture here, I've got a key light pointed at the face. Basically, there's a rim light to light that edge of the arm. And then this would basically be your fill light to warm fill or bounce light around off of the rest of the scene. You got that rim light again right around the edges on this. Key light's going to be, looks like on this side. And anyway, you get the idea. And here's blue, so at night scenes it would be totally black, right, if you didn't have any lights on. So they use usually a blue light in a scene to show your objects in the scene, and the audience can still tell that it's dark or night, something like that. Here's an old submission example. That's still too dark for me. I guess I was having some rendering issues then, potentially, or lighting issues, to get that bright enough. What I really should have done, if I had kept it in this, I should have added a blue light to give it more of that look. So anyway, if you have questions, just let me know. But let's cover the rubric real quick. I have it pretty large. Create a key light, create a fill light with a color and lower intensity, create a backlight at a lower intensity of your key light, submit a render, JPEG format works. If you're really struggling because your computer can't handle the rendering, submit a screenshot of your scene in Maya with the 7 button on so I can see how the lighting's working. So that would be your submission for your render if you couldn't get it to work right. And this is really the perfect start to our midterm. This is literally, you're going to use the same exact file, so make sure you save this out We'll get into texturing the bookcase. That's something you're going to need to do on your own for the midterm. I don't cover how to do it, but you already know how to with between all the ways I've shown you. Automatic unwrap, planar unwrapping, spherical, cylindrical, best plane I showed you. But yeah, and camera based, I think, if I didn't already say that. So you should be able to unwrap this really, really easily and get it textured. The other thing I was going to say, import all objects into the scene, add Arnold materials, which I'll upload here. I'll upload that entire little zip file that I've got, but I got it on Polyhaven. And then add all textures to shield, diffuse. So you have to make sure you have all the textures applied to the shield and add the textures to your crate and barrel. So when you import those, they should already be on there. So that should be really, really simple. Now, when you submit this, what I recommend doing is I'm going to actually make it mandatory. I want you to take a screenshot of your scene with wireframe on shaded, as well as in the actual render. If the rendering isn't working, submit a screenshot without one with wireframe on shaded and one without. If you can render and you're not running into any rendering issues, submit the render. And then you can submit your Maya file as well as all your texture files, especially if you've been sort of like struggling getting the rendering working, so I can take a look at it. I can potentially render it for you if you're struggling that much with it. But if you do have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Call me, text me, email me, whatever. Message me on Canvas inbox. That's going to be the fastest way for me to respond to you. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this little lab with importing all your objects into the scene, adding lights, and creating a camera, and getting into the very, very beginning of lighting and rendering. Like I said, you can do an entire class just on lighting and rendering. Literally, there are schools out there that 100% have an entire class dedicated to lighting. There is so much technical stuff that goes into lighting, especially in video game engines. It's crazy, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, reach out. But other than that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for following along, and I'll see you in the next video.